The following feature presentation is part of the Skywalking Network.
This is what you can look forward to on episode 402 of Skywalking Through Neverland.
So it was a really big show to open the episode.
Because it wouldn't be the Bad Batch if they weren't dumped into a high-intensity fight or a battle.
And then they all plummet to their deaths at the end, which is really tragic.
It was great to see her grow, and she's no longer in pajamas. Got
Wait,
an
whoa.
outfit.
What's wrong with always being in pajamas?
Oh my god, this episode got dark real fast.
Yeah.
This is what we're capable of doing to you if you stand against us, so think twice.
The question becomes, like, what kind of life are we giving Omega?
I think that's the big conflict of this second season.
And they make a point of showing that to us in the first episode, that they have freedom to choose, but not quite freedom to live.
Are you ready?
Off to Neverland!
Here we go!
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
To all who come to this happy place, welcome. Disneyland is your land.
When I first made Star Wars, everybody in Hollywood said, well, this is a movie Disney should have made.
You're more than just fans. You're family.
Best day ever!
Secrets lab.
It's about family, and that's what's so powerful about it.
Hey.
When you use a bird to write with, it's called tweeting.
When we visit the world of Disney, we never grow old. It's a Peter Pan, Never Land that keeps us young in heart.
This is Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi, and you are skywalking through Neverland. I have a good feeling about this.
Happy New Year, Skywalkers!
It's 2023. Seems like 2022 was so long ago. But so much is coming up this year that we may have to do 2 shows a week again just to keep up. What do you say?
Well, as long as we get to 500 by our 10-year anniversary.
Oh.
Gauntlet thrown.
Hashtag goals. But for right now, let's focus on you, our Skywalkers. So we want to welcome you back to
Skywalking Through Neverland.
I am Richard Wolosky, but now everyone please say hello to my sweetie wife Sarah, who is wearing her Mandalorian pajamas. You'll see that's a theme on this show.
Yes. I'm so comfy in my Mando and Grogu PJs. Richard, are you comfy in your new pajama pants?
Oh, well, these are Last Jedi pajama pants, so these aren't too new.
I was hoping that you just roll with it and pretend that you were wearing your new pajama pants.
It's pajama, not pajama.
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 Oh, my.
Skywalkers.
Oh, no.
Weigh in.
Is it pajama?
Well, you know what? We're not starting this year off right, okay?
I don't know.
We're at each other's throats with this whole pajama thing.
So you know what? Let's focus on the Skywalkers again.
Okay.
And Skywalkers, we are your enthusiastic podcast destination for the many decades of your Star Wars, Disney, and Marvel fandom. So it's time to give you guys, not ourselves, but you guys, a big Wookiee hug. The first Wookiee hug of the year. And your sprinkle of pixie dust. For our family of Skywalkers, our Skywalking family, we love you so much. Now, 2023 started off with a bang by giving us season 2 of The Bad Batch right out of the gate. So coming up on this episode, we're going to review the first 2 power-packed episodes that are released on Disney Plus on January 4th. And we are joined by Tricia Barr and BJ Priester.
Now, we are being sponsored by Small World Vacations, and they are a diamond-level Disney vacation planner travel agency and can help you book your trip to a Disney park around the world or on the Galactic Star Cruiser, one of our highlights from 2022. Mm-hmm. And best of all, this service is free. Yep, you heard me right. Free of charge. So head over there to smallworldvacations.com for a no-obligation price quote and tell them Skywalking Through Neverland sent you, and do it while wearing your pajamas.
Or your pajamas, which would make more sense.
I thought I would get that one by you. Now, we are recording this from Long Beach, California, and despite what we said earlier, that it's 2023, we're really recording this on December 31st, 2022. Literally just a few mere hours away from 2023.
All right. Well, what happened then today in Star Wars history?
I'm so glad you asked, because today is the 46th birthday of Chris Terrio.
Oh.
And Chris Terrio, along with J.J. Abrams, wrote the screenplay for The Rise of Skywalker. And he also provided the voice for Resistance Colonel Aftab Akbar. Yes, a relation to Admiral Akbar. And we had a chance to meet Chris at the Rise of Skywalker press event. A very nice and a very, very humble guy.
Mm-hmm.
And he had won a Best Adapted Screenplay Academy Award for his work on Argo, one of the best films of 2012. And he co-wrote Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice. I'm just going to say Batman versus Superman.
Yeah.
And Justice League. Say what you will, I thought those two films were very fun.
Okay, but they were no Argo. But that's okay.
No. Or, if Ben Affleck were saying Argo, he'd be saying Argo.
Ah.
Yeah, you get that Boston the Bostonians speak Argo. So happy New Year and happy birthday to Chris Terrio.
He was born, incidentally, in the year 1976.
Pre-Star Wars.
Yes.
BSW or BBY.
BBY.
One year BBY. 1 year before the Battle of Yavin.
Yep.
All right, with that, let's see what Clone Force 99 is up to in the second season of The Bad Batch.
Hey, boys. Any chance I could use you for a mission? The Empire's growing stronger. Then let's get to work.
We do what needs to be done.
It could be fun.
We went over the plan 5 times. I got the package, didn't I?
The Bad Batch. New season streaming January 4th, only on Disney+.
The Bad Batch is back with Season 2, and Disney Plus is giving us 2 of the 16 episodes on January the 4th. Well, we're going to share our thoughts on these episodes, as well as sound bites from the press roundtables that included Dee Bradley Baker, Michelle Ang, and executive producers Jennifer Corbett and Brad Rau.
With us is our own Bad Batch, Tricia Barr, my friend and Fangirls Going Rogue co-host, and FanGIRL Blog writer and Hyperspace Theories co-host, BJ Priester.
Hey, Tricia and BJ.
I don't think we can be as rehearsed as that, but hey, everybody.
Hey.
Well, we love it, and we're so glad you've joined us for a talk on The Bad Batch.
Michelle Ang, is that did Omega just walk in the room?
Especially Tick.
Omega, we're so thankful that you're here, but you know what? Please move so Sarah can sit back down, okay?
Oh my gosh, he keeps taking my spot.
I know. That's Omega for you, and that's a little preview of her character in this season. She takes charge.
All right, so Tricia and BJ, were you guys excited to hear that the Bad Batch was returning with season 2? And what do you want to see? So Tricia, let's start with you.
Oh yeah, I mean, I enjoyed the first season. It was unexpected and different, completely not what I thought we were going to get, better than I thought we were going to get. And there's so much more we can learn about these characters. So bring it on, and we're getting to learn things about after Order 66. So more of that, please.
Yeah.
All right, BJ.
So I really enjoyed the first season as well. And so I was looking forward to the second season. But I have to say my excitement really went up a lot after Andor, because now we're getting to see sort of where things were, relatively speaking, in the immediate aftermath of Order 66, especially in the first season of The Bad Batch. We literally start with Order 66 and then go a short period of time after that. And now we know Omega's a little bit older, but still not a lot. So we're still in The Bad Batch right in the immediate aftermath of the rise of the Empire. And then Andor, we're at about, 10 years or so, 15 years down the road. So much closer to A New Hope. But we're getting to see, different stages of where the Empire is. And so I'm really curious to see how they connect that up.
Yeah, especially because this whole period hasn't been explored as much. I mean, now with all these shows and everything, now they're really exploring this period. So that's a cool way of looking at it.
So after the last season ended, Sarah, what did you want to see going into season 2?
Oh gosh, that's really a hard question now that we've seen some of season 2, but
go back to last season.
Okay, so that ended with the destruction of Camino, basically. And that was like unprecedented. So, yeah, I think what really held my interest was kind of what BJ was saying, is this whole how the Empire is turning the galaxy in their favor, basically. Like what does it take to switch regimes from this old republic to an empire? And what are these little steps that affect different communities across the galaxy?
Mm-hmm.
What about you?
For me, when going into the Bad Batch, the first season, I thought, okay, this is going to be Clone Wars season 8. A lot of fighting, a lot of wars, and okay, let's just do it. But then they gave us Omega, and this really paralleled Mandalorian, with thinking Mandalorian is just going to go out on all these hunts, but now he has to take care of Grogu, so it just changes the dynamic of the story 180 degrees. And the same thing happened here when they realized they've got to take care of this clone child. It really changed the story. And going into the season, I thought this could go anywhere at this point. What are they going to do to raise Omega, not just to be a soldier, but to be a kid, and knowing other people other than clones? Can we give her a normal life? Can we give her a life that's not just all about protecting herself and being on the edge of your seat because at any time war could break out? There was so much they could do with Omega. And also, I really wanted to see the whole war mantle system, that the program of converting the soldiers of the Empire from being clones to stormtroopers. I really wanted so much of that, because going back to when I was a kid, knowing that the stormtroopers were clones, and this has been a storytelling point, from so many years ago, where they were clones, then turned into actual troopers, drafted troopers. And I really wanted to see that shift and how it happened, and I was so excited to see more of that.
Okay.
So I was expecting a lot.
Nice. All right. Well, so it's time, you guys. We're going to talk about the first 2 episodes of Bad Batch Season 2, Spoils of War and Ruins of War. And speaking of spoils, there will be spoilers for these 2 episodes. Now, side note, all of us have seen 14 episodes of the 16-episode season, thanks to Disney and Lucasfilm. They sent us screeners. We were kind of floored when we saw how many they had given us. But do not worry, we won't spoil anything to come. At the very end, we'll give some thoughts, spoiler-free thoughts on what we've seen.
Yes, we won't spoil anything after episode 2.
Correct.
And there's lots to spoil, but we won't do it.
No. All right. So, Richard, you want to read a summary for episode 1, Spoils of War? Get us all caught up.
After the Bad Batch, including an older Omega, barely escaped from beach pod crabs, they return to Sid's cantina. Well, Sid wastes no time and gives them a new mission: raid Count Dooku's war chest on Serrano. However, when they get there, they find the Empire has already beaten them to it. Several cargo carriers are already taking dozens of containers filled with Dooku's spoils. And of course, the Bad Batch's mission goes sideways, and the episode ends with a cargo container with Omega, Tech, and Echo inside is jettisoned off a carrier and plummets to the planet's surface. Ugh.
Scary. All right, so what do we all think of this episode as the first episode?
BJ, should we start with you this time?
Sure. So I enjoyed a lot, tying into Richard, what you said. The episode really starts with Omega. I mean, there's this little bit with the crazy crabs that are trying to stop them from getting a crate. I don't know why the crabs care about the crate. I assume the crabs are just monsters that happen to live on the planet where they're stealing this crate from. But anyway, It starts kind of with Tech and Omega at the Marauder, and she's doing her homework, essentially, right? He's got this little data pad with information about all these different ships on it, and she's a kid, she's bored, she wants, why can't we have recess? Why are we, we're on this beautiful beach, why am I having to do my homework? But they then pay it off later in the episode because her knowledge of the cargo containers and the freighter itself is what actually forms their escape plan, and it creates this idea to jettison the cargo containers from the bigger carrier, and then they all plummet to their deaths at the end, which is really tragic. But it was a good idea at the time. No, but so like you said, Richard, I mean, Omega was the wild card that we didn't really expect coming into season 1, and they just really jump us into season 2 with the show is centered around Omega, and the Bad Batch is kind of her, her 5 dads or whatever it is, 5 uncles, 5 older brothers. And so I just like that they just jump us right back in of, no, really, just remember, this is about Omega and the boys.
Nice.
Which should have been the title of this new season, Omega and the Boys. You know how the Clone Wars would have Bounty Hunters or Bounty Hunters Rise?
All right.
That should have been the title. They missed the boat. All right, Tricia, what are your thoughts on this episode?
Well, they enter back in its classic in media res type of style for Star Wars, where you literally get dumped into the action. But I think it's really interesting that the end of last season was the episode essentially Topoka City was ruined and they were buried underwater, and they had to be essentially reborn in the clone tubes and get, rocketed up. Everything about the water in that episode was like dark and foreboding and death. And they experience a rebirth, and they start out with water again, but it's very bright and light and more just to say, hey, this is where they are. They're farther along. It's a show to show us that she has more skills. She's more confident. She's swinging down the little rope and helping as far as the fighting and taking orders and participating in the group. And they're confident that she can do the things that she needs to do to be part of the team. So it was a really big show to open the episode.
I think Tricia's looking at my notes because I had the same thing. Coming off of a very dark season 1 and coming into season 2 was very bright. Yeah, the bright water as opposed to the very dark and fiery waters of Topoka City. Here we are on a nice beach location. Looks like something from Moana.
It does. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and I thought, oh, okay, so the Bad Batch are still on vacation. No, they're not. No, they're not. Because it wouldn't be the Bad Batch if they weren't dumped into a high intensity fight or a battle. And this time they're running from these crab pod monsters. And yeah, my question still is, what are they taking? I don't think that crate was in there. I think they brought the crate to steal something, and that was how they were going to carry something out. And if that's the case, well, Bad Batch, you kind of had this coming. You went into their territory, and you're taking something that doesn't belong to you, so put it back, and they'll leave you alone. I always have an issue with when people or characters go into someone else's territory and take what doesn't belong to them. I have an issue with that. So, if we lost a couple of Bad Batchers, it's karma. And I liked seeing the return of the little medic droid, AZ. I love AZ. So when we go into Sid's Cantina, the Bad Batch is met by AZ, the Republic medical droid, who was one of the ones who found the inhibitor chips in the clones. Oh. So this is a big hero of the Star Wars saga. And now he's working as a waiter.
Yeah, server droid.
He's a server droid in Sid's Cantina.
I kind of wondered if they were going for a Captain Rex Star Tours DJ in Oga's Cantina little nod there by turning the little droid with a similar shape of head into the bartender at Sid's Cantina.
It kind of reminded me of that, a little bit.
And I love seeing the new addition of Wanda Sykes as Fee Genoa.
Yes.
I want to say Genoa.
Yeah.
Yeah, who's an old friend of Sid's and a pirate. So lots to come with this character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she has a very slow way of speaking.
Yeah, that's the beauty of Wanda Sykes. She doesn't telegraph her humor.
No. I feel like right away Omega definitely popped off the screen as, having her own agency, being very capable. I mean, she is from that clone DNA, so she already has those fighting skills and things. So it was great to see her grow. And she's no longer in pajamas. She has a helmet. She's got an outfit.
What's wrong with always being in pajamas? I see nothing wrong with that.
I guess absolutely nothing at all as we look down at ourselves in our PJs. Oh my gosh. Another thing that struck me in this episode is that the Bad Batch, I guess they didn't. Yeah, no. When they're on the cargo container ship, like they're being taken away, Tech and
Echo
and
and Omega.
Yeah. So they are always. It's always very apparent that they're stunning the clone troopers.
Yeah.
Here, always very apparent, and I like that attention to detail, because these are their brothers. Like they don't kill them, they stun them. So I thought. And also in this episode, there's a lot more clone troopers than stormtroopers.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I like the fact that they were always stunning.
Yes.
The clones, but I really wanted to cut away to one of the other clone troopers going, why are they firing at us? And connecting those dots. These guys don't want to kill us because we're all brothers. And I wanted to see that as a stepping stone to more of the clones reevaluating their lives.
Okay.
They also only brought smoke bombs instead of grenades because typically your kit would be a grenade in that kind of situation. So they're carrying smoke bombs too. So everything they're doing is very much trying to not be kill their brothers, but play out their mission.
Yeah. So hopefully at some point they'll say that. I'm not going to spoil anything, so I'm going to stop right there.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Now, so when the clones get to Serrano and they already see the Imperial cargo ships taking away these like hundreds and hundreds of containers filled with treasure, I really wanted to see like one container filled with like 1,000 Dooku capes, kind of like what Lando had on the Millennium Falcon and Solo. I wanted to see some personal items, maybe a big dry erase board with a chart of apprentices like Ventress and Savage, something to really connect us with Count Dooku. After what we had gone through with Tales of the Jedi, I thought they were going to really play up more of Count Dooku.
I actually was kind of expecting them to open one of the crates and have it be like a bunch of mint and box action figures or something. It's just kind of like a wink at where the value is in this fandom.
I think the more important thing to take away from it being Count Dooku's planet is that they're making the point that they're going to a separatist world, and because he's the leader of the separatists, they're really trying to make a point of who these people are. And remember, they believe, the separatists believe, that the Republic was corrupt and that they were people in power were trying to take more power and more things from them, and they ended up fighting that. When the Emperor rose to power, they weren't wrong,
right?
So so it's an important point to see that we're going to Count Dooku's homeworld specifically because he was the head of the separatist before he died, and was, I think a lot of people probably don't even know what really happened with him and how he, his role in everything that played out with, as far as for Palpatine and Dooku's part.
Now, when they landed on Serrano, they made a point by saying that the castle, the estate, had already been bombarded by the Empire.
Yes,
the same way that they had bombarded Tipoca City.
Right.
Why do you think they would have done that?
Well, to keep themselves, to Palpatine, to keep him as far as not known as being with Dooku, like to get rid of any more
evidence,
any more proof that there was a connection, that there was a plan, that this was part, that the separatist leader was actually working in concert with the man who rose and took over as the emperor of the new empire. So, but they also making a point here to the clones that, they've been bombarded. Now this other planet has been bombarded. And so, and then we think about going to Andor and how they've showed that all these worlds have been sacked or, taken over. So it's just playing out this thing that we're going to see over and over and over again, that the Empire is just bombarding worlds, taking them over, sacking them, taking their resources for their purpose. So they either destroy you or they take everything from you.
I thought it was a personal thing from Palpatine going, Dooku, you really discouraged me.
It's more to the rest of the Separatists, right? You want to bombard the head of the Separatist Empire. Just that's why you ultimately want the Death Star, right? You want to just be able to go to whoever starts to rise up and say, nope, go ahead. We'll just bombard you with it. We'll blow your planet up.
Yeah.
So it's a show of power.
Yeah, well, with Palpatine, there's always multiple layers, right? And so in real world history, this is something we do. I mean, you sack a city and you salt the earth back in the Roman days, or the firebombing of Dresden during World War II, or Sherman burns Atlanta to the ground and then marches to the sea, when they're defeating the Confederacy in the Civil War. So this is not an uncommon thing in warfare, that you would bombard major military installations or even the capital of your enemy as part of trying to force them to surrender. So there's a very sort of traditional commonsensical idea that bombing Sereno would not be unexpected at the end of a major war like this. But there's this extra layer, as Tricia said, which is potentially people who live in that city could be some of the people who would be more capable of connecting the dots of who Dooku really is and what his role in the war was relative to Palpatine and the Republic. And so you either kill those people or you put them into hiding, and you certainly send a message, we've won, you've lost, back off. And I agree, it's very much a foreshadowing of ultimately what the Death Star is, which is this is what we're capable of doing to you if you stand against us. So think twice.
Right.
Yeah, we've also seen this a lot in Star Wars with bombing of Mandalore and all the battle droids just wiping the city out. But you would think that if we're gonna aerial bombard Serrano, we're gonna destroy all these treasures, including all these packaged action figures. You're gonna ruin the packaging, the bubble. It's gonna come off of the card back. It's just gonna be a mess.
That's true.
That's where my brain went with all this.
I really enjoyed getting to see Hunter and Wrecker in the throne room from the Clone Wars.
Oh, wasn't that awesome?
Yeah, I mean, that was, the scenes with the Night Sisters came after Dooku there, and Mother Talzin doing the magic to mess with him there. So just, again, seeing that set, for lack of a better word, from the Clone Wars, repurposed when they're in Sereno. I thought that was just and the color scheme was even the same. Such a great touch.
I even had to pause it. And it said the same thing to Sarah. This is where all these great battles with Dooku took place. It's very much shades of Rise of Skywalker.
And Ventress too, right? Ventress.
In Ventress, yeah. In Rise of Skywalker, when Rey and Kylo met in the Emperor's throne room from Return of the Jedi.
Right. Yeah.
I loved seeing that, knowing what happened there. And now a new battle is going to take place. And if you only knew the history of that very room.
And then remind me, in the Clone Wars, when Ventress had her her brother. No.
Savage.
Didn't she and Savage go to confront Dooku in the room, and then he used that same exit out? I want to say he went down just like Wrecker and Hunter did.
Yeah,
down under the dais, right?
Yeah, the Night Sisters.
Okay.
Well, they attacked Dooku in his bedroom. That's just not fair.
Okay. Okay.
And he was in his pajamas.
Yeah.
And look how well he did.
But I thought there was another scene in Clone Wars where Dooku used an exit like that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. He was attacked several times in that throne room, and he took that same way out.
That Wrecker found. Oh, this ain't stopped me. that it's all
jammed.
It's all jammed. Oh, not for me. Bam. That was great. I loved that.
Any Easter eggs anyone saw? In Sid's office, I saw the white Boba Fett helmet hanging up on the wall.
Oh.
I thought, okay, it's the white Boba Fett helmet. Is there a connection here to Joe Johnston or Dwayne Dunham, who was in the white Boba Fett outfit when Joe Johnston had done that little documentary, that little behind the scenes of the Boba Fett outfit when they were just testing it out?
Yeah, is the white Boba Fett outfit a prototype? Is that right? Wasn't
For
it
The Empire Strikes Back, yes.
Prototype figure? Or
Well,
an actual...
when they were testing out the costume in 1979,
Oh.
they had made it all white.
Okay,
And
it
Joe
wasn't-
Johnston did like a little behind the scene testing the outfit on videotape.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I thought, okay, is there a Joe Johnston connection here? Dwayne Dunham, who was the editor on Return of the Jedi, he was in the outfit. Is there a connection there somehow? But I couldn't find anything. I think maybe it's just like a really fun Easter egg, something to look at.
I think so.
Is it in this episode or the next episode? But essentially the early stormtroopers we're seeing in the show are the prototype stormtroopers, right?
Yeah, the Ralph McQuarrie troopers.
So I feel like there's a parallel there. Like we got the prototype stormtrooper, we got the prototype Boba Fett. Again, we're early after movie episode 3.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to be in like the concept art stage for episode 4 before we get to the actual versions. No, I think that's really what they're doing. Like that's how Filoni thinks. So I think, I think that's what they're doing on purpose.
I think that's awesome. I also feel that like the whole story of this episode, I mean, there is this question going on with the Bad Batch themselves. Like now the Bad Batch, they're essentially considered dead by the Empire. So they are free in a way, and yet they still have to get money, like survive basically. So there's this overarching question that they have this freedom, but what should they use it for? Should they use it to settle down somewhere? Or should they use it to fight back against the Empire? And right away we see that Echo is on the side, like he wants to fight. He wants to use his freedom for fighting back, and the others aren't really sure yet. So this is a question that's going to continue, but I like that they plant those seeds right in this first episode.
Yeah, these are clone troopers. These are warriors. So
yeah.
I can't see them ever settling down on that.
Well, they have
beach.
Omega. That's why
Right.
that's what the question becomes, like, what kind of life are we giving Omega?
I think that's the big conflict of this second season.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Now, with Omega, when they land on Serrano and she asks, what should we take? What should we take? And Hunter says, anything shiny or heavy. It was very much a Jurassic Park callback. If it's heavy, it's expensive.
So put it back.
So whatever you find, if it's heavy, put it in the shopping cart.
That's so cute. And shinies.
Shiny. There you go.
Shinies. Yeah,
there's a callback too.
Nice.
Now, the one thing I just want to mention is they are free in a way, but they aren't really. They still are in an oppressive relationship with Sid. They have to go on a mission because she keeps reminding them she knows things about them. And right now they think that nobody knows that they're alive, but Sid has dangled that over their heads several times. So they aren't really free yet. And they make a point of showing that to us in the first episode, that they have freedom to choose, but not quite freedom to live yet.
And she keeps dangling that carrot where, you know what, this one last mission is going to be worth more than 1,000 missions. She keeps saying that.
Yeah.
So, of course, they're going to say, okay, this one last one.
And then you have the name, right, which is fee. What do you pay to
survive?
You pay a fee, right? Like, so there's all these layers of meaning in how they're writing the show.
In the names.
Yeah.
Nice. Fee Genoa is a pirate. Makes sense.
Yeah. A liberator of ancient wonders.
Oh, so many people are going to use that for a BJ. Has anyone used this in your law classes to get off of an offense?
I'm sure they will. A liberator of ancient wonders. Yes, exactly. It's a great line.
That needs to be a whole course.
Yeah.
BJ, get on that, okay? I'll take your class. All right, with that, let's roll into episode 2, Ruins of War. This episode picks up with the cargo container plummeting back down to Serrano, but suddenly the thrusters kick on and they are saved. However, the container crash lands and teeters over the edge of a cliff. The clones realize they have to abandon the treasure in the container, but Omega is obsessed with saving it. In the process, Tech is injured, and as they hobble away, they are met by an old-timer named Romar, a native of Serrano. He brings them back to his home, but Omega, who is still obsessed with retrieving the treasure, quietly leaves. She later admits that her obsession comes from wanting to steal the fortune so the clones can have a normal life and not worry about her.
Oh.
So let's talk about that aspect there. That's her whole drive for this arc, that she overheard the clones earlier talking they don't have a normal life because they got to take care of Omega. That's the way she heard it. Like, oh, like a kid, it's always my fault. But
Right.
as Echo tells her, no, we want this. We could have gone any direction, but we chose you. So her wanting the treasure and giving the clones a normal life is that, do you think she's trying to prove her worth to the clones, or just because she wants the clones to get this treasure so they can maybe reside somewhere on a beachfront property and take it easy? This could go either way. What do we think about that?
I think it's pretty obvious that Hunter is the father and Echo is the mother if you lay out the family dynamic. And it was Hunter and Echo who had the discussion where Echo said what he said. And so I read it just as a child seeing her parents have a disagreement or have frustration in their relationship, and she's going to take it as her own and and she's desperately trying to fix it. She's desperately trying to make it so that Echo doesn't feel the things that he's felt. So, he was just honest with his feelings, and unfortunately she heard it and it hurt her feelings, and she wants to make that right, to the point that she isn't even reasonable. And, we have the whole like Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade moment of let it go,
Yes. It's so funny.
Isn't that more of a Frozen thing?
Well, no. Okay. What's really funny about that, as I was, my notes were the same. I was like, she was like, the let it go. Yes. That's exactly like in,
Elsa.
He's like, let it go, Elsa. And her name is Elsa in The Last Crusade. And Elsa sings Let It Go in Frozen. Yep. I was like, what? I need to make a meme.
Someone must have made a YouTube video about that.
I know. Let it go, Elsa. Elsa, let it go. I love it.
Leave the snowman down there and let's go.
Yeah, and I think too that Omega, the other version of that same idea is that from what Omega overhears is she feels like she's a burden to them. She feels like she's holding them back from what they really want to do. And so I think she believes in her mind that if they get all this money, then they certainly wouldn't have to work for Sid anymore. And they would have a lot more control over their lives, and maybe they could, I don't know what she has in mind, but they'd send her off to boarding school or something. I don't know. But they wouldn't necessarily have to feel like everything they're doing is to build a good life for her, because if they had all this money, then they could just pay for what they needed. Mm-hmm. And it's very accurate child psychology, I think, to just have this child react in this way. When they feel like they're a burden, or they feel like they're making things more difficult for their parents, they're trying to fix that.
Yeah.
And so, that's definitely what she just feels like, I have to fix. This is my fault, so I have to fix it.
Yeah, I think it's all the above. She wants to prove herself to be part of this unit, as well as we all came here to get this treasure, and if I can save this, then I can save our family. And there's just so much riding on her getting that treasure back, even though the rest of the clones are like, forget about it, it's gone. But when kids obsess over something, there's no turning them back.
And I think one of the most poignant parts of this episode is, Omega, she's been raised at this point by the Bad Batch. She's been raised on Topoka City. She's not really had a childhood. And that is really, really shown here when Romar, who is voiced by Hector Elizondo, he gives Omega, the toy. The kaleidoscope toy. And she's like, oh, it's shiny. There's treasure in here. And he's like, no, it's a toy. She's like, what's that? Like, she didn't even know what that was. And I just thought that was so poignant, even to the point at the very end and she didn't accept it at first, right? But at the very end of the episode, you get this really awesome shot of Wrecker, like they're back on the Marauder. They're leaving. And you get the shot of Wrecker, who has his new toy, which is the the blaster from the tank.
The cannon.
The tank's cannon. And he's like petting it like it's a toy. And then the shot goes to Omega, and she actually picks up the kaleidoscope and starts like actually using it like a toy. So it's like they're different toys. It's very cute. And Wrecker is like her brother more than a father or mother figure in the whole clone relationships there.
Since we're talking about the canon, we might as well mention that although they did not shoot any of their brothers in the previous episode, both Wrecker and Tech actually shoot with a real gun at their brothers. So you're starting to see the batch have to take lethal force against other clones. And so there's 2 of them in this episode. So we'll see how that goes going forward.
Ooh, nice catch there. Yeah.
Yeah, this episode had a lot of prequel images with the clone tank, and I love it when they start pouring in all the prequel images just to connect this with the prequels. We had a lot of clone troopers, the Republic gunship, and when Tech gives Omega an order, she replies with "Roger." It would have been too much had she said "Roger, Roger."
Yeah.
But had we ever heard her say "Roger" before to an order? There's got to be some kind of a battle droid connection there.
Roger.
I'm sure if she had said "Roger, Roger," they would have said "No, no, no, never." Go to your room, Omega. Never say that again.
That's funny. Let's see. Well, let's talk about Romar, who's voiced by Hector Elizondo of Princess Diaries and Pretty Woman fame.
Any Gary Marshall movie.
I know. I love him. His voice is so calming.
Yep.
And I thought that it was a great use of his voice. Like all throughout the episode, I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but he was just so calm. And the character itself. So Romar, this character, he brought up the point that, you know, he's not a separatist. He was here long before the planet became a separatist planet. He's kind of planting the idea in Omega's mind that there's people all across the galaxy who has been oppressed by various different regimes, not just the Empire, but also the separatists or whatever what planet they happen to be on.
I think even more so, not that he's not a separatist, but that they use the word separatist to make somebody not be a person. So you're just a separatist, and he's like, I'm a Serenian. I'm a person. Like, you don't make me, I'm not like a thing that you just hate. I'm a person. And make that point, because, you know, that starts to break the boundaries. It's like, oh, I won't even talk to that person because they have a different political affiliation. Oh, you know, remember, there's people behind those opinions.
I like the fact that he said, yeah, I'm just because I'm from Serrano doesn't mean I'm a separatist.
Yeah.
Oh, there's so much to that. Someone can have one political, like you said, Tricia, one political belief. That doesn't mean they're across the board believing in every single one of those beliefs that one politician or that one side believes in.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And Romar, I could have sworn he was voiced by Clancy Brown. He had that same kind of voice texture as Ryder Azadi from Rebels. That very nice and calm voice. And when we found out it was Hector, it's like, I still don't really hear Hector in that.
Right.
But the credits say it's him, so I'm going to believe it.
Yeah.
And how they keep sharing Clancy Brown. He's been in Clone Wars, Rebels, and Mandalorian.
Yeah.
So I'm sure Clancy had seen this episode and said, hey, guys, I'm right here. He sounds like me. Why not you have me on the payroll? Come on.
Well, Richard, while we're mistaking people for Clancy Brown, I was convinced that the bell ringer guy in Andor was Clancy Brown.
Yes. Oh, very, very much so.
But he wasn't really.
No.
But I thought it looked like the first few times I saw him, I'm like, is that Clancy Brown? Looks like him.
I'm sure Clancy's like, come on, people, stop casting people who look and sound like me. I'm right here.
Yeah.
I'm a phone call away. You know my number.
That's so funny.
Now, before the episode ends, Clone Captain Wilco is reprimanded by Admiral Rampart, Imperial Admiral Rampart, who says that Wilco's reports were inaccurate since Wilco had claimed that he had seen Clone Force 99 on Serrano. However, Rampart had already submitted a report to Grand Moff Tarkin acknowledging that the Bad Batch had been killed at the Poca City, so Rampart wants Wilco to submit a new report which Wilco refuses, which leads to his demise.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you're not going to falsify these reports to save my butt, eat laser.
And fall down a cliff. Oh my God. This episode got dark real fast.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, we're not in season 1 anymore, folks.
Yeah. I like the fact that these clones were starting to question imperial orders, because there's so much darkness and secrecy behind it, not like with the Republic on the surface.
Mm-hmm.
So you're starting to see these clones question things, but now look what happens when you start questioning imperial order. You're going to fall off the high ground.
Think of how much trouble they could have saved Cassie and Andor if they had just shot Cyril Karn refusing to falsify the report, right? There's all these great connections between the shows. Like this running theme in Andor of falsifying your reports.
Very true.
Premor does it. Blevin does it. It starts all the way back here.
Wow. Okay, well, one thing, did you guys notice any other Easter eggs? Because I noticed one.
Oh.
And it's a sound bite, a sound Easter egg, when our heroes are like just getting up, or no, they're trying to save Omega because she went back to the shipping container, and all of a sudden you hear speeder bike noises. That was like, so nostalgic to hear those speeder bike noises in the woods in the dark. So anyway, that's your connection with the
Empire.
All right. Anything else you guys want to say? Oh, so overall, what did you guys think of these 2 episodes, this premiere?
I'll start with that, but I do want to mention one thing. Tech takes a pretty big hit and has a big injury in this episode. And I thought it was an interesting choice that they did that. But they were doing a lot with his character and showing him fight through something like that, which a lot of people had said in last season that he had the least development of any characters. He moved the least. And I feel like they moved him quite a bit in the first 2 episodes to make him show him differently than he had been. And then we see him fight through this injury to really step up and be a protector, and to the point where he passes out. And it's just an interesting moment and choice to do for that character, considering that character had been the one that people had said he really didn't move at all last season. So I just thought I'd point that out as maybe, I don't know if they're answering a criticism or this is where they always intended to make the move on the character. So maybe someday we can ask we don't, when we interview them the first time, we haven't seen anything, so it's hard to ask questions because we don't know what's coming. So that's always next time, hopefully.
Yeah, if anything, he's had the most progression. He's Omega's tutor, and he
Mm-hmm.
gets this
injury,
this love interest.
Yeah.
Well, they won't they?
Now, Tricia, also, I believe Tech is the one that you gravitate toward most.
Yeah, to me, just the way he's kind of an engineerish type, the way he sees things and they're very obvious to him, how people are acting, reacting, why they would do the things they do. To me, that's very much the way I am. I'm like, oh, it's obvious somebody made that choice because blah, 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 blah. And people are like, huh. So there's things in his character that I gravitate to anyway. So to me, it was cool to see that happen. I think he's like the older brother in the family as far as the dynamic, and Wrecker was the younger brother, and now Omega's in there as the other sibling. So how they kind of rotate, in him being very protective of his younger sister, even though she's older, is technically older. She just looks younger.
Right.
And echoes that cousin that lives very close by, so he's always there.
Yep.
All right, now talking about the press conferences that we had attended, that we got a chance to talk to a lot of these actors and producers, but hadn't really seen any of the episodes yet.
Mm-hmm.
So let's roll into some of the most prominent sound bites that relate to these characters and where the story is going.
Yes. Yeah, so you'll hear from Dee Bradley Baker, which is the voice of the Bad Batch, Michelle Eng, voice of Omega, and then the head writer and executive producer Jennifer Corbett, and showrunner Brad Rau, who is also executive producer as well. So let's hear from them how the team records, and we're going to start this off by Tricia. You had a great question asking Michelle Eng about this.
Hi, Tricia. That's a really fun question. I'm in New Zealand. I record in New Zealand, literally in my little studio in my house. So I am 100% by myself. And I get to zoom into LA and San Francisco. Our team is kind of spread between those two places. And I'm not 100% sure of the animation process because a lot of the times when we do our record, I just have a script and a director and possibly my co-stars, my co-voice actors. But then when we do pickups, the animation and the recording process has converged a little bit more. So it's always exciting on pickup record because we get a little glimpse of the animatics, often, nowhere near finished. But that's when you really sort of see the direction and the mind's eye of the director bringing the vocal performance and layering it with, the animation beats. But really, in terms of what I do, I kind of work solely in the audio space until the very, very end. But they also record me, I think. I have to record my face, and it's weird. Sometimes it's 6 a.m. in the morning, and and I'm like, oh, I pity the person who has to watch this video. But I think sometimes they might take some of my mannerisms and work that into their ideas for Omega.
Oh my gosh, she is just adorable. I love Michelle Ang.
Didn't she appear at Celebration wearing this like one-piece pajama?
I think so. Yeah.
She's a good sport, different than what we know from the Clone Wars, how they recorded, and also it's a different time now in the post-COVID era. So that's kind of why I wanted to know, like, are they, Zooming together? Are they by themselves? It sounds like they are getting to record some things with other actors, just not in the same place. Obviously, she lives far, far away. So, but that was neat to see that, how it plays out a little differently than it used to.
Yeah, it's great seeing those behind the scenes on the Clone Wars, where you have Ashley Eckstein and Matt Lanter and Dee Bradley Baker in the same room and reacting off of each other. I'm sure for an actor that really helps out, but I think more and more actors are getting used to the whole Zoom thing because we doing this on Zoom right now. I think it's just as easy as doing it live in person, and plus you can do it in your pajamas.
Right.
But there's a whole theme here to this show.
Yeah. And Dee Bradley Baker even mentioned how, he would be on the Zoom sometimes with Michelle, so they'd be on the Zoom together recording their lines so they could still have that connection.
Mm-hmm. I also think too, if you think about the pre-COVID days, they probably wouldn't have cast Michelle Ang if she's living in New Zealand, right? They would have just found someone in California or at least the United States to play the role. But because they were going to be doing it remotely, they actually could hire someone who's literally halfway around the world, and it's going to work fine because the audio quality, I'm sure they have the high-speed internet and all this stuff, right? So the audio quality they're getting from that remote record is just as good as it would be if she was in Los Angeles.
Right.
Yeah, and all these actors have their own home studios.
Yeah.
All right, so then I asked Michelle what was her process for aging up Omega for season 2.
Oh, thank you. That's an interesting question. So it's more that obviously for season 1, I had to work much harder to sound younger. Season 2 is almost in some ways easier to be a little bit older because it's closer to my own natural state. And it's really just like I sort of said, the childlike wonder is tempered down a bit. And season 2, I feel, is a little bit emotionally darker and more challenging. So I think just because of the emotional stakes that we see Omega go through, the viewers and my performance was sort of, it was really easy to lean into like making her feel a little bit older because of the emotional stakes that our story takes her through this season.
It seems counterintuitive, but it was actually easier for her to do this one than it was the other one because she was playing much, much younger. And for people who don't know, she's late 30s.
Yeah.
It's just like Ashley Eckstein with every season of the Clone Wars has got to step up Ahsoka and step it up and step it up. So there's a lot of thought process that goes through this. And I'm sure she channeled her, a 10, 11-year-old self for this, but yet having to also have the weight of the galaxy on your shoulders.
So at the end of every episode of The Bad Batch, we see the credits and we see Dee Bradley Baker is the Bad Batch, which I think is awesome credit right there. So let's hear from Dee himself about, how he makes every clone voice different. And Mark Newbold of Fantha Tracks asked him this great question.
How keen or not keen are you to take on new clone voices? And I ask that because it's always recognizably the same guy, but presumably there's only so many ways you can do the same guy. Do you relish taking on another iteration of that character, or do you sometimes think, oh, what am I going to do?
I always think, what am I going to do? And then, and then we nail in something that gives this new clone character something unique. And sometimes it's an image, sometimes it's an adjective or two. But you can always add something that's a different flavor of angle on any of them, just to keep them all separate and to establish something of the character of each of these, because they're not generic. That's the key, is these guys are not generic, and they all have a different age, a different kind of experience, a different attitude towards problem solving. And so I think we can keep going. And in season 2 we do that. There's some really interesting characters coming up. Mayday, where it's like there's new, fresh, interesting guys that it's like, yes, they're clones, but this feels like a new guy, a new character.
So I think it's so interesting that he, just to change the flavor of any clone voices, not only the Bad Batch, but any new ones that comes across, he like maybe puts a picture there or some like an image in his head or an object that changes his perception that will then change his voice. I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
I got to ask, which member of Clone Force 99 is easiest for Dee Bradley Baker and which takes more work. So here is his answer. Well,
the most amount of work is Wrecker. He's also the most amount of fun, but vocally speaking, it's a lot more vocal heavy lifting, so to speak. The easiest is to jump into is Tech. I mean, I'm kind of I speak too fast, I think too fast, and I'm probably I feel the most affiliation with him than all the other clones, I'm going to guess. So it's probably those. It's going to be Tech. He's the easiest to hop into.
Thank you.
Yeah.
See, he found my boy Tech the easiest, so doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
Tech sounds the most normal of all of them, and Wrecker, is the one that seems like it takes a lot of energy to get it to that level. Everything has to come out.
Yeah, no kidding. Whoa. Boom.
Well, I can't do one of the easiest voices is just a big gruff voice.
Right, but it also probably messes with your vocal cords a little bit, I would think.
Oh, I don't know. I kind of like doing that voice. It really all comes from the chest, not from the throat.
Say, I am Batman.
I'm Batman.
There you go.
See?
He gets a lot of diaphragm work when he does Wrecker.
Yeah.
There you go. All right, then, Richard, you had a great question to ask of Brad and Jennifer. I'm sorry, Brad Rau and Jennifer Corbett. But when I was writing the notes, I'm like, hey, it's Bennifer.
Yeah, well, I thank them for casting one of my favorite comedians of all time, Wanda Sykes, and their eyes just lit up, just knowing what a great time they had recording with her, because she's got such a great vocal quality.
Yeah, Wanda is so cool. She's so funny. She's so good. And we always, even regardless of how her character's written on the page, when we're with her in the booth, she'll have ideas, for tweaks of lines or how to bring a certain, swagger to the role, which is that's really the fun thing, to see how she reacts off of our main characters. It's a joy and a pleasure to work with her.
And she plays Fee Genoa, who's a sort of a we call her the liberator of ancient wonders, which is her definition for smuggler / pirate. But she's a friend of Sid's, and yeah, Wanda's such a delight to work with, and we're excited about the fans seeing this character.
Yeah, unfortunately, at this point, none of us had seen the season, so we couldn't ask any more questions about her. So we got a little bit of a generic answer, but it's great to hear that Wanda is cool and funny.
Yeah, she didn't have a whole lot to do in these 2 episodes. So they were very, very reserved in telling us that, because I thought she was going to be a major character. But she's in that one scene in Sid's office, and we never see her again.
At least so far.
Right.
All right, so now we're going to talk about character arcs in the season. And Tarkin's Top Shelf, Becca asked this great question of Michelle Ang. What's the difference between Omega now versus where we left her in season 1?
We have a time jump, and in season 1, she was very much a naive youth. She'd never left Camino. So the physical wonder of, being on different planets and the physical world was sort of what really amazed her. I think what we kind of move into for season 2 for Omega is this awareness of deeper themes of politics, of meeting communities and people who have a lifestyle that feels intrinsically unjust or unfair to her, and sort of she starts to investigate that. We also have, mentors that she comes across who have different views about like what the mercenary life means. And I think overall it's this idea of identity, like who is she, who are the batch, and how do they choose to, now that they're free, how do they choose to spend their existence, and can they and should they advocate for a cause, or do they have a right just to exist and enjoy life and not be on missions, either their own or someone else's?
So we talked about this in our review of these 2 episodes. We see this debate between Tech and Echo, how they should spend their life. Just trying to live or actually advocating for fighting against the Empire.
One of these days, we're going to get an interview answer, and the person's going to be like, well, in season 1, she was a nice, youthful kid, and in season 2, she's a cold-blooded killer. But they never, we never get a good answer like that. They're always a little too spoiler phobic to give us a nice, straight answer.
All right, so now we're going to get on the subject of story arcs, and Jennifer Corbett is the head writer. And Jennifer had a really interesting things to say about season 2 and the overall story arc. So Sky Talkers asked her, what themes were you interested in exploring in season 2?
Well, I'd say the word that I use for season 2 is crossroads, and that is what several of our characters come to in season 2, and we explore sort of the changing dynamic between the Batch and the Empire, but also the internal dynamic within the Bad Batch, and how that evolves as more pressure is put on them, and as the Empire is continuing to rise to power.
I thought crossroads was just a really awesome term. Like, what a way to sum up this season. And that's all I'll say about that. But now, Tricia, you got to ask Jennifer your own question.
Obviously, some of the clones still have their chips, and they're functionally younger than Omega when Order 66 happened. Does having more information and wisdom change how the chips are going to affect the clones?
I think with what we're exploring with the chips is that, it's once the clones have committed Order 66, it's, at least with the Batch, obviously their chips were a little degraded because they're considered genetically, mutations of clones. So it didn't fully work. And, Crofster obviously had his removed later on. But not all clones are the same, and how others are reacting to not just the chip, but what they've done, and who's more aware of the actions they've committed, and also, like, as time progresses, what that means for them as they're looking at their involvement within the Empire.
I knew I couldn't get a whole answer, but I got part of an answer.
That's pretty much the theme to all of these press roundtables. You make it an answer to the question you asked. You make it an answer to a question you didn't ask.
So now wait, so the chips are still in them, is that correct?
Yes.
Except
Yes.
for Crosshair, who took his out. Okay, so you were thinking like maybe they'd be affected in some way by these remaining chips in their head.
Or that because as they learn more things over time, that you would respond differently to them, which is essentially kind of the answer they're giving us without telling us, everything, because we know how the Bad Batch, including Crosshair, have dealt with the chips, but they're still in everybody else. So they aren't really a way that just make them, operate. They're not droids, right? They can't just say you're going to do this, but they had this Order 66. It said, when the time comes, you will believe that the Jedi are traitors, even though you've been following them, that you'll change and turn on them. And how do you operate with more information? So for me personally, I look at the chips as sort of like the idea of being programmed. Like when you grow up and you learn something and you've been taught something, but then, if you try to, as you get older, you get away from the programming, or you learn more things, you go to college and you learn more things about what you've been taught, and then you start to see it differently. And so the chip is a way of putting that in like a notion of a thing in somebody, but how do we overcome it? And all of us are overcoming programming of some sort in our life.
You don't see it more as an off and on switch?
No.
Interesting.
Okay.
Even when when Order 66 comes in the Clone Wars season 7, he knows that it's happening to him, and he fights it for a little bit. That, what happens, and then he continues. But I don't think as time goes on, I don't think it just can keep, for the short term, it did what it needed to do, which is wipe out the Jedi. But I don't think it's something they can maintain over a long period of time.
Well, we saw that with clone Captain Wilco.
Right.
In really questioning orders.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. Well, when talking with Brad and Jennifer, I definitely wanted to ask a music question.
That is so unlike you.
Well, all of us Star Wars fan sites kind of have our niches, and so we have to ask the music questions. And Kevin Kiner is again the composer for the Bad Batch. And I asked them how, because Omega now is more grown up, how did her innocent theme change from season 1 to season 2?
Ooh, we could spend this whole time talking about Kevin Kiner and all of Team Kiner, Dean and Sean as well, his son. They're so great. Omega's theme is so beautiful. And if you listen carefully, you'll hear it in different versions throughout season 2. Depending on the situation. I'll just say, because I don't want to take up all the time, watch out for episode 3 coming out pretty quick in season 2. The music is incredible. And, speaking of the direction to the Kiners, it's really a collaboration. When we do music spotting, I tell them these are the moods we're going for, and they always have thoughts. They're so good. They're the best.
Which I wish they would have talked about the whole roundtable with them, because they gave a very, very short answer and then moved on right away, because I got the first question, and I think they were like trying to get everybody in. But, so episode 3, can't wait to hear what the music they're talking about is incredible. I do want to bring up a couple music moments that I noticed in episode 1, like when Omega is rescuing the other members from the crabs at the very opening of the first episode, the Bad Batch theme plays, but it's this fantastic version that's very orchestral and exciting and action. And then later, when they're on Sereno and sneaking around that, discovering the war chest for the first time, the Bad Batch theme comes in, but it's like the Ben sneaks around theme. It's like the do 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 do. It's so cute. It's like, oh, how many ways can we use the Bad Batch theme? So I have to listen now for Omega's theme and how many ways they use that. That'd be fun. So now we're going to talk about our final topic here, which is what to expect this season. And we got a few of the answers in the roundtables pertaining to this. So I put them all together so we can listen to that. And then we're going to talk ourselves about what we thought of those 14 episodes that we have seen. So, first of all, we haven't heard about Crosshair yet. We haven't seen Crosshair in these 2 episodes. And so Dee Bradley Baker speaks to Crosshair and his thought process, and he answers in the voice of Crosshair. So I thought we should hear what he had to say.
But our real question is about Crosshair. So we know that he's working for the Empire and that they phase out the clothes at some point. So is he aware of the Empire's plan to get rid of the clothes and replace them with stormtroopers? Or does he think that he's too valuable for the Empire to replace him and that he's basically not going to be affected by their plan?
That's a very interesting question. Because Crosshair has thrown in with the Empire, hasn't he? And yet now he has to see how the consequences of his choices play out in the larger scope of things.
So in terms of how that's going to play out, I mean, that's the interesting story that's been put into play, isn't it? Is that he's left his team, he's joined a larger team, and the question is, and that is dealt with very directly in the second season, is how does that play out? It's a very interesting question.
And that's a great answer without saying anything at all. However, it was in Crosshair's voice, so I just felt we needed Crosshair in this episode.
Yep.
Richard, you got to ask the last question of Michelle Eng in the roundtable. This is the final roundtable. So you wanted to know, how would Omega herself describe season 2 in her words?
Good question. I think from her point of view, it would be like, if there was a catchphrase, it would be like, don't worry about me. I'm going to be fine. Let's do this for our family. I think she has, without giving away any spoilers, she has this incredible bravery in the face of something that will literally rip apart their family. And she is not fearful because she knows that she wants to contribute to the greater cause.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great answer. That pretty much sums up Omega.
Mm-hmm.
That she just wants to contribute and prove her worth to the Bad Batch, to Clone Force 99.
Yeah. But wow, what's going to rip apart her family? I guess we're going to find out.
Not those crabs.
Not if she can help it.
They tried, but they had big claws. It didn't work, though.
Yeah. Okay, so throughout a lot of these Disney Plus shows, we see Dave Filoni as executive producer. But Brian Young was able to ask Brad and Jennifer, what kind of influence does Dave Filoni have on this show day to day?
I mean, usually Dave hears the stories that are percolating in our brains as we're getting ready to go into story conferences. We'll talk to him about, the next group of episodes, but also, we had discussions on season 2 and where we'd like to go and certain tentpole episodes that were of, key interest to us. And, he provides guidance and input throughout the whole process in terms of before these episodes even get broken to the draft phase to even later on when it's animated. So, he's there to, make sure that making sure it's the best version and asking us the important questions and making sure that we're, hitting everything and bringing everything to the level that it should be.
Yeah, he gives us notes at various phases of our previs process and our full animation process. And sometimes they hurt, sometimes those hurt, but they're always, he's so smart. He's so good. And his influence is literally across the whole show.
It's interesting to know how involved Dave Filoni is. And I'm glad to hear that. So it seems like he's kind of the Kevin Feige of Marvel, but for Disney, it seems like.
Well, he's juggling 55 shows at one time.
Right.
But when he says, when they say sometimes it hurts, meaning that, oh, I should have seen that coming, or, oh, I got to go back and redo this. Not like Dave comes in there and says, well, you bleep and bleep, bleep, bleep.
No.
You bleep. Why that bleep didn't you bleep, 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 and slams the door. He's not like a James Cameron.
Right. No.
Well, Dave doesn't want to have those moments back when, I remember when they had the the fresher in the one episode of Rebels, and he was like, yeah, it was kind of big, like where he didn't comment on some of the things, and then people were asking about it, and Dave was like, yeah, I probably should have told him to check the size type thing. But more importantly, the stuff that they're doing here is very important. Richard, you spoke to it. The things you wanted to see when they transitioned from clones to stormtroopers. And I think Dave Filoni's got his fingers in that, because he has a very clear idea how that happened and what's going on. And they also need to line that stuff up with Andor. So Dave is a point in the company who can see those things and see how to get from episode 3 of the trilogy to episode 4 of the original trilogy and make them all work.
Well, at some point, they got to release his show Bibles. Those would just be tremendous to see how they get from one place to the other in each season.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
One more thought on that too, which is, I think Dave pays extra attention to things that are from George.
Yeah.
And so the Bad Batch squad is created by George for the Clone Wars, and Dave is particularly concerned about that George's content be followed through in a certain kind of way. And when you're doing others, he obviously consults on other things, but he's particularly, I don't think you're wrong, Richard. I mean, I do think in some sense Dave views this as kind of Clone Wars season 8.5 or something like that, right? It's very Clone Wars adjacent.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we're going to round out the comments from Brad Rau and Jennifer Corbett with Tricia's question, because at this point we had seen the trailer for Bad Batch season 2, which includes a certain Wookiee.
Gunji returns.
So Tricia, you got to ask them about bringing Gunji into this season.
Ooh, yeah. Very, very fun. And he's quite a character. Seeing Gunji with Omega in particular brings lots of joy to my life. Hopefully to all of you as well when you see it. We love Gunji.
Yeah, we. I'm trying to remember specifically how the evolution of that happened, but I think the way we pitched it was that we wanted through season 2, it's other people that they've come into contact with, right, that need assistance and need help, and the idea of a Jedi youngling having survived but having no support system, and the opportunity to pair him with Omega, like Brad was saying, was just, she rarely gets to hang out with kids, which is why we loved the Hera episodes last year. But Gunji's a very different individual, and I'm pretty sure that was a Dave Filoni suggestion of who that youngling or that Padawan could be, and we were thrilled to bring him back because we're all massive fans.
So here's another example of Dave Filoni stepping in and saying, "Oh, you need a Jedi that has survived Order 66? How about Gunji?"
I loved this answer, and for people who don't remember or aren't familiar with the Clone Wars, Gunji was part of that younglings arc that sort of popped up out of nowhere late, and was an idea from George Lucas. I think the Clone Wars was getting kind of adult, and they were having a lot of adult episodes, and the youngling arc was kind of bringing it back to where it needed to be, Star Wars being animation, particularly being for kids. So it's nice to see one of those characters coming up in the story, and people are going to be really excited about, people who are fans of Gunji in the Clone Wars are going to be really excited about why he's in this season.
Yeah, that was supposed to be a spinoff of the Clone Wars.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
With all these younglings. And that would have been a great way to bring in the younger kids. Like you said, the Clone Wars had gotten really dark, but now you have these fun characters. Like you had the Wookiee youngling, you had an Ithorian, you had a Rodian, all being taught by Ahsoka.
Katuni.
And the one that captured everyone's heart was Gunji.
Of course. And he had a wooden lightsaber hilt, right?
Yeah.
That was so cool. Wow.
And now we're only 1 degree of Kevin Bacon away from Hondo Ohnaka. So we're overdue. He's going to show up. If they put him in Galaxy's Edge, he's coming in something. I don't know where, but he's coming.
Yeah, there's been a lack of Hondo lately.
Mm.
And he's such a great character who just spans all of the timelines.
Mm-hmm.
That they need to bring him back in here somewhere. Because he's roaming around. Right now he's with the Ghost Crew.
Okay.
Oh, maybe this is really before
No,
the
it's
Ghost.
before,
It's
yeah.
before the Ghost Crew.
He's doing his pirate thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So bring back Gunji and bring back Hondo Anaka.
Yes. All right. So at this point, we're gonna
Which means, hold on, merchandising. We need merchandising. we need a plush Gunji.
We need Gunji's lightsaber at Galaxy's Edge.
Oh,
people go nuts.
And then they already got the costume. All they have to do is take the bandolier off and give him the lightsaber. Now Gunji's walking around Galaxy's Edge.
And that one snaggletooth, it's right there.
Yeah.
Nice. All right, so we have seen 14 of the 16 episodes this season. We're just going to share some spoiler-free thoughts. If you don't want to hear anything about it, then fast forward like 10 minutes. But if you do, then keep listening. So, Tricia, do you have any thoughts?
My biggest thought is if you're a fan of the Clone Wars, you're really going to like the show, the season of The Bad Batch. I also think if you like things that were happening in Andor, you're going to like the season of The Bad Batch. And it's going to, every episode has a dual meaning in the title. Everything has a dual meaning. So that to me says that The Bad Batch has a dual meaning too. And I'm look forward to people figuring out what that second meaning is, because the Bad Batch is, we think of that core group of clones. And I think they're going to expand on the idea of what the Bad Batch is in this season. So that's all I'm going to say. I really enjoyed everything, but there are a couple episodes that are just really stellar standout, and I can't wait till we get there, that are like, wow, they did a really good job.
Nice.
All right, BJ, what's your spoiler-free thoughts on the rest of the season of what you've seen so far?
I think I would say that the first two episodes that everybody gets with the premiere, it does a really good job of setting the tone and the themes of what we see for the rest of the season. I mean, and that's in terms of some of the stuff we talked about already today, like the clones being replaced by recruits and the Empire trying to assert control over the galaxy, and some of these separatist planets who were opposing the Republic because they thought it was, tyrannical or corrupt. Well, there's now a new tyrannical corrupt government in the center of the galaxy, so they're still upset about their situation. They still feel like they're being oppressed. The nature of imperial bureaucracy, imperial military, and the other thing I'll say is, tying into what we've mentioned already, keep your eye out for other locations that we've seen before that reappear, just like the throne room on Sereno shows up. And the Let It Go moment is not the only famous movie homage we get during the season as well. So it's just, like I said, I think these first two episodes really encapsulate a lot of the inspirations and themes that the writers and directors, showrunners were going for this season. And, that's just, it's a great start for that reason, because it's really representative of the story that they're telling.
Yeah. And one thing I want to say is I'm so glad that in the first season of The Bad Batch, at the very first episodes, we got Crosshair to split off from The Bad Batch. Because now in this season, that really pays off in us getting to see a whole different side of the galaxy, rather than just seeing from the point of view of the Bad Batch and what they're doing and their missions and things like that. We then go to certain episodes with Crosshair and what he's seeing and his point of view, and it's utterly fascinating. And those are my favorite episodes. So that's all I'll say about that. Richard.
This season really parallels the second season of The Mandalorian, which I loved but felt was very uneven, extremely uneven. And I think the same thing here. We got a great start, but then all of a sudden we pivot to these standalone stories, which we didn't need. because we got such a huge story to tell here. Huge story, but yet they take out an episode or 2 or 3 or 4 to do these stories that doesn't really propel the whole storyline of this season. And I wanted to see more of what should have been portrayed, such as the whole War Mantle program, which I really want to see. It was hardly touched upon, and whenever the story would get going, they'd roll back to a standalone episode, which it's like, okay, let's get through this because I want to see the bigger story at hand. So the standalones were very good and very, very high intensity moments there. We saw a lot of character developments within that story, but just not of the bigger storyline. So I liked the season. When it was over, it's like, okay, I guess I gotta wait until next season to see the bigger story.
Well, to be fair, we haven't seen the last two episodes.
No, right, but from what the 14 episodes we have seen, to me there were too many standalone episodes we didn't really need. You have this great story set up. Why break away from that? Kind of like with the Mandalorian season 2, they would have these great stories, and then they would punch back to a story that had nothing to do with anything else, or that one little story nugget in that episode could have been lifted and put into another episode that really propelled the whole season.
Okay. Do we know if there's going to be a season 3?
Based on what we've seen, there has to be a season 3 in the works.
It'll probably be announced in April.
Yeah, I was gonna. BJ beat me to it.
Yeah, I mean, without giving anything away, I think where the story's at is very much episode 2 or Empire Strikes Back type of vibe to it.
Yeah.
From what we've seen, the 14th episode, that 14th episode left us on a huge cliffhanger, and I can't wait to see what happens next. It's going to be explosive.
And we're going to have to wait till March.
Mm-hmm.
Or the way they're sending us screeners, maybe in about 15 minutes.
I don't think we're going to see the last 2 until they show up. I think there's things in there they don't want out there.
I hope you're right, because I want this to look forward to.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then again, at this point, we'll already be watching The Mandalorian.
Oh, yeah.
But you know what? We can watch 2 Star Wars shows at the same time. All right, twist my arm.
No movies coming out anytime soon, so there you go.
Oh, that's a mouthful.
Star Wars shows.
And you've seen some fans have been expressing some discontent about how long they felt that Bad Batch was delayed, that they thought it would have launched sooner. And just Sarah and Richard, what you're both saying, I think it's important sometimes for people to think about this, because I think there's a significant chance that the reason they're holding episodes 15 and 16 of the Bad Batch till late March is because it syncs up with something that we're going to see in The Mandalorian season 3, and they're syncing those up to release either at the same week or consecutive weeks on purpose, and that I think there's a real possibility that they waited on Bad Batch so they could sync it up with Mandalorian and season 3, and that by the end, late March, early April, leading into Celebration, that will trigger some announcements there that are related to the revelations at the end of the Bad Batch and in Mando season 3.
I think waiting is not always a bad thing.
No.
We're supposed to get this season back in September, but the fact that they're pushing it back is for a good reason,
right?
Which is yet to be discovered. But if they're pushing it back because they want to tie it into something else, that makes the whole experience that much more enjoyable instead of just putting it out there in September.
I just remember all the time things would get moved around in Rebels and the Clone Wars. All of a sudden they'd shift dates and everybody would be like, why are they shifting dates? And it always was for a reason. Something lined up with this or lined up with that, or, you know, worked for this or whatever. So I feel like that they moved it because they wanted to, because they could make something cool and crossover. And even though these things should be standalone, you can watch them, but to get the synergy for different things to buzz and grow is cool.
I agree.
Very much so.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And where can people find you out on social media? Tricia.
You can find me Twitter, Instagram, at Fangirl Cantina. And you can check out fangirlsgoingrogue.com for that podcast and Fangirl Blog for the Hyperspace Theories podcast, where we talk about, and I talk about storytelling and Star Wars storytelling in particular, occasionally Marvel storytelling. So we break down the structure, and we're going to have a lot of fun things to talk about with the Bad Batch.
BJ.
Yep. So for me, again, you can find some of the blogging I've done at Fangirl Blog and Red Pen of Lex on Twitter and Instagram.
All right. So, Sarah, how would Omega take us out of this segment?
Bad Batch tick. All right, everyone. It's time. I don't know. What would she say? Let's go. It's season 2. Everyone. And we're out.
You got to do your Neverland on Alderaan within that.
Oh, okay. Bad Batch tick. Neverland on Alderaan.
Nice.
Okay, guys. That wraps up episode 402 of Skywalking Through Neverland. We want to thank Tricia Barr and BJ Priester for sharing their thoughts on The Bad Batch Season 2. And all of you Skywalkers who listen and watch and say hi on social media, we could not have done this without you. And we want to wish you a very happy new year.
Now, interested in our book, Today in Star Wars History? Well, autographed copies of Part 1 and Part 2 are now available at skywalkingthroughneverland.com/book. And we want to thank all those Skywalkers who had purchased this book to give to Star Wars fans, and they had told us that they had opened up these gifts on Christmas morning.
So exciting.
One of the highlights of my year.
It was amazing. Now, we'd also like to thank our sponsor, Small World Vacations, for their support. And this now, 2023, is Disney's 100th anniversary. So now is the time to think of a trip to Disney parks, because all the parks are celebrating the 100th anniversary of the Disney company. So you can go and fill out a Get a Quote form at smallworldvacations.com today. Their vacation planning service is free of charge. So check it out and tell them Skywalking Through Neverland sent you.
And here's a big question for 2023. How would you like to support Skywalking Through Neverland? Well, consider supporting us through the Skywalking Force, which is our Patreon. The Skywalking Force has access to bonus content in the form of our Zoom discussions we have on the Disney Plus shows such as Obi-Wan Kenobi, Ms. Marvel, Moon Knight, going back to WandaVision, and coming up, Bad Batch Season 2. And if you're part of the Skywalking Force, you can get a coupon code to use for Today in Star Wars History Part 1 and Part 2.
And this bonus content begins at only $5 a month, so head to skywalkingforce.com, have a look at the options, and thank you so much to those of you who are already part of the Skywalking Force.
Now, we are part of the Skywalking Network,
Skynet,
where you can find other great shows like Talking Apes,
the Max Effects Podcast,
the Neverland Clubhouse,
Totally Tell Me Everything,
Star Warsologies,
and the YouTube shows Collectopolis and
Today in Star Wars History.
You can find us on social media. We are at Skywalking Pod for Twitter and Instagram, and you can also join our Facebook group or like our Facebook page. So just search Facebook for Skywalking Through Neverland. You can email us as well. We are share@skywalkingthroughneverland.com.
Now, don't forget to stick around for bloopers and other fun bits that didn't make it into the show. And, Omega, please take us out.
Always remember...
To what?
To Neverland on Alderaan.
Neverland on Alderaan. Some imagination, huh?
To our Skywalkers and Tweetwalkers, thanks for listening. Skywalking Through Neverland is created and produced by Richard and Sarah Woloski. Original music by Rob Dellinger. Creative consultant Mark Augushowitz. Technical advisor Peter Heitman. Facebook administrators Donald Wicks, Joey Pittman, and Norma Heitman.
Skywalking Through Neverland is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Any sounds, music, and clips played during this podcast are the property of their copyright holders. All original content is property of Skywalking Through Neverland, all rights reserved. Sorry, had to be said.
Or the bad bitch.
Oh. Hashtag Sarah swears.
Yes.
The Bad Batch is back with
Hold
season.
Hold
what?
on, you're loud.
No, I'm not loud.
You're loud. Okay, try it again.
Have we just met?
I know.
Tech. Okay,
how?
How is that an ow?
I'm gonna put you at 6.
Yeah, always at a 6.
Okay, go ahead.
Have we met before?
I'm putting you at 6. Tick.
Take 5.
They record my face and I pity the person who has to watch this video.
There you go.
I hope Michelle Ng isn't mad at me. It's very hard. Her accent is very hard.
Oh, I think you nailed it.
That's sort of how Michelle responded to your question, Richard, the last question. That when you asked her to do it in Omega's voice, she's like,
yeah.
Neverland on Alderaan. The A's are R.
You could be a voice double for Michelle Ng.
Oh, I don't think so.
Oh,
I think people could tell.
You know what?
People
we'll
could
agree
tell.
to disagree.
People could tell I'm not saying tick right.
It's more of a tick.
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 I said tick.
Tick.
That's what I said.
Tick.
All right, stop it now. All right, are we done?
We're done for 2022, our last recording for 2022.